The next morning Skeffington awakened early, as he always did. He knew that the day would be exactly like the great majority of his days in its routine, yet coming as it did at the beginning of both his 73rd year and the start of another campaign, he found it particularly exhilarating and even significant. He rose, said his morning prayers, and had his breakfast brought up to him. After breakfast he picked up a book and settled down by the long front bedroom window to read. This had been his morning custom for nearly 50 years. 20 years before, it had been the principal target of Festus Mother Garvey, a crafty little volcano of a man who in middle life had been given his nickname because of his habit of carrying his mother about with him for purposes of endorsement. She would appear by his side at political rallies. The opening dialogue was unvarying.
Good evening, Ma. Good evening to you, Festus, me son. Ma, I'd like to have you meet all these grand folks out in the audience who came all the way here to see what I had to say for myself this evening. Well, God love them all, Festus. And I'd like all you grand folks to meet the lovely mother to who I owe everything I have and ever will have. You'll always be my best girl, Ma. Thank you, Festus. And I'd like to tell all of us that my son Festus has always been the grandest son in the world to me. And if you vote for him, you'll be making no mistake.
Neither in forest nor in city was the passenger pigeon safe from hunters. Audubon in 1805 saw thousands of dead passenger pigeons being unloaded on the Hudson River docks of New York City, where they were sold for a cent apiece. But a few years later, the birds were a fashionable delicacy in great demand, and the price rose to $1 a dozen. Thousands of live pigeons were trapped and kept in boxes for pigeon hunts. These pigeon shoots were elaborate social events of the time. Despite the killing, the passenger pigeon did not show any great reduction in numbers during the early 19th century. When a bill to protect the birds was proposed in Ohio in 1857, a committee of the state legislature reported, "The passenger pigeon needs no protection. Wonderfully prolific. No ordinary destruction can lessen them." That was true. What happened to the passenger pigeon was extraordinary destruction. About 10 years ago, it appeared, when Rillian, the son of Caspian, was a very young knight, he rode with the queen his mother on a May morning in the north parts of Narnia. They had many squires and ladies with them, and all wore garlands of fresh leaves on their heads and horns at their side, but they had no hounds with them, for they were maying, not hunting. In the warm part of the day they came to a pleasant glade where a fountain flowed freshly out of the earth, and there they dismounted and ate and drank and were merry. After a time the queen felt sleepy, and they spread cloaks for her on the grassy bank, and Prince Rillian with the rest of the party went a little way from her. And so presently a great serpent came out of the thick wood and stung the queen in her hand. All heard her cry out and rush towards her, and Rillian was first at her side. He saw the worm gliding away from her, and made after it with his sword drawn. It was great, shining, and as green as poison, so that he could see it well, but it glided away into thick bushes, and he could not come at it. So he returned to his mother, and found them all busy about her. But they were busy in vain, for at the first glance of her face, Rillian knew that no physic in the world would do her good. As long as the life was in her, she seemed to be trying hard to tell him something, but she could not speak clearly, and whatever her message was, she died without delivering it. It was then hardly 10 minutes since they had first heard her cry. Victoria was putting away the dishes and seemed not to hear. Summers still sat in his chair. He was truly in a devil of a temper with everybody and everything, a wicked, fiendish mood that made him look quite handsome, as fate would have it. He had heard Jack's hint. He knew Victoria was attracted to him, that she imagined no nonsense about love. She was too remote from the old world, and too momentary for that. And at this moment she was fascinated, and when she said, in her slightly contralto voice, "You're not in a temper with me, though, are you, Mr. Summers?" She was so comely, like a maiden just ready for love, and like a comely, desirous virgin offering herself to the wayfarer in the name of the god of bright desire, that Summers stretched out his hand and stroked her hot cheek very delicately with the tips of his fingers, replying, "I could never be angry with you. You're much too winsome." She looked at him with her dark eyes dilated into a glow. a glow of offering. He smiled faintly, rising to his feet, and desire in all his limbs like a power. And his days of anger seemed to culminate now in this moment, like bitter smolderings that at last leap into flame. Not love, just weapon-like desire. He knew it. The god Bacchus, Iacchos, bacchanals with weapon hands. She had the sacred glow in her eyes. Jack would not begrudge the god, and the fire was very clean and steely after the smoke, and he felt the velvety fire from her face in his fingertips. A few final thoughts about record buying. You don't have to spend a fortune. Every major label has reissues which they package and sell cheaply. A whole generation of music lovers grew up listening to obscure German orchestras like the Southwest German Radio Orchestra on Turnabout. If you're on a budget, check out the cheaper labels. After all, it's the music you're after, not the performances, right? But what about live concerts? You're probably still a little intimidated by all those guys up on a stage in their monkey suits, not to mention the people in the audience in their monkey suits. You don't even own a monkey suit, or a monkey dress for that matter. What, still scared? After all the icons we've smashed? Remember, concert going, a terrible word but we seem to be stuck with it, is supposed to be fun. And it is fun. Just start small. You don't have to buy a full season's worth of tickets to your local orchestra, although they'd certainly like you to. Why? Because the single ticket buyer can't be trusted to show up the next week. That's why. This way, they know what their deficit's going to be in advance, instead of being surprised by it at the end of the season.